This is number 3 for today. I wanted to mention before I forget, the first video I made by the underpass where I live in Flower Bluff, I didn't get it on video because I had my phone off, or I was uploading a picture as I was walking back to my car. I shut the video. That video, I shut it by then. There was a motorcycle cop right next to my vehicle coming out. I parked in a little store. It's a new store there on SPID and Flower Bluff Drive called Country Store or whatever. It's new, I like it. But he was coming right out there. My phone, it has a little, looks like it's a GPS signal. And the phone will say, the GPS will say your phone is being tracked. Which is, I guess people can do that. But it doesn't always come on. And it's an icon. At first I didn't know what that was because I normally don't use GPS. I don't do all that. But today it's on. It comes on each time I'm turning the airplane setting on and off, so I make the video. All of these things that you see me talk about, I've talked about all these for a long time. Just now on the radio, I had the radio on as I'm driving to make this third video today. On the radio, it was breaking news, but it came over, the little rock and roll station. Supposedly, the city of Corpus Christi is going to be in tremendous liability for the most recent water ban. It just came out now, it's breaking news. In the year 2013, the city was required, I guess by the TE, the environmental thing of Texas, Environmental Agency, they were required to monitor what is called backflow. Backflow was the problem that we just had, another water ban in the city of Corpus Christi, which made it to national news. Most people didn't think there was any wrongdoing by the city itself because it was a private company called Valero, and the backflow meant the water connection that's hooked up to that oil industry, that Valero plant. It's some chemicals, like between 10 and 25 gallons of a particular chemical backflowed and came out. Well, they just found out just now, it's breaking news. The city was supposed to monitor by law the backflow, and they weren't doing it. This just came out. In 2013, they realized this could be a problem in the future, and there was something that came on the news just now, and they were supposed to have local plumbers or private plumbers maybe check it, but the city seems now that they're going to be liable for this problem. It just came out. All of these things, John, you're just downing our city. No, I'm saying when you see in the particular things you hear me talk on, which I wasn't really aware of a lot of the corruption until I started talking about it. But when you see that, you see local judges, Guy Williams, and others basically telling the public, we cannot stop the criminality in the local DA. It causes people to not want to locate to this region. Okay? So these things do have an effect. I can mention the case I spoke about before. I would have stopped in that area. Years ago, Pops told me that there was a local judge by the name of Judge Mary. I remember this case. And he said we used to pass a little old hotel there in the area where Pops lives. And whenever we passed it, he used to tell me that Judge Mary, she left the bench, this is Nueces County, and she had a retirement check, and Judge Mary lived in that hotel. I'm not sure if she became a drug addict, but Pops told me a lot of the guys from the street, she let them stay there. She had guilt, Judge Mary, and she would get her retirement check as a judge, but they would steal her money, and she kind of started living with a lot of the drug addicts in that area where you saw me in the last video. And I remember Pops used to tell me that Judge Mary committed suicide. And I'd listen, and I know some of the stories. You know, I could always rely on Pops. But then he used to tell me, and I would listen. And he told me, I said, why did she kill herself, Pops? He said, because she convicted somebody on a death penalty case. She was the judge that presided over that case, he said. And they put him to death. And then they found out later he was innocent. And then I remembered the one case in the U.S., the anti-death penalty movement uses one case in the whole United States of America that they believe they executed an innocent man. And this is a famous Corpus Christi case. Again, there are documentaries on this. The Hannah Overton thing, there are documentaries. The reason you have so many documentaries of corruption and criminality within the court system is because they have a history of doing this. And in the Carlos de Luna case, I watched these over the years. Carlos de Luna was one of the guys, like you see a lot of my friends. I never knew Carlos de Luna. But on the streets, drug problems, Corpus Christi area. And there was a woman at one of the little stores here that was killed in a robbery, stabbed. Well, Carlos de Luna, they found him that night, hiding under a vehicle. And he had money on him. But Carlos de Luna, during the cops, this is the Corpus Christi Police Department, along with this DA's office, the saying that the most recent stuff happened. And this happened years ago. So they arrested him and charged him with the capital murder, death penalty case, which they almost charged that man that they just shot the flash bomb into his house, which is found innocent, attempted capital murder on 7. Well, Carlos de Luna, when they investigated the case, the CCPD, along with the prosecutor from Nueces County, whoever he was at the time, Carlos de Luna said he was with his friend that night by the name of Carlos Hernandez, who looks just like Carlos de Luna. So he said his friend Carlos Hernandez actually did the robbery and stabbed the girl, but he was afraid to bring it up. Okay. So what you would normally do is investigate. Does Carlos Hernandez look like Carlos de Luna? Does Carlos ask his friends, is Carlos Hernandez going around bragging that he killed the girl? Well, Carlos de Luna was on death row for so many years, and they executed Carlos. He claimed he was innocent from the beginning. But during the trial, he did bring this out to his lawyer, that it was the guy he was with, and he was afraid to say it because his friend, Carlos Hernandez, had a history of stabbing using knives. Now, there's books on this case, but it's Corpus Christi. But the cops and the prosecutor denied that there was any Carlos Hernandez. They said that Carlos Hernandez was a figment of Carlos de Luna's imagination. Of course, the jury's hearing this, and the jury believes, they think that the police and the prosecutors are going to speak truth. That's what the system depends on. So they convicted him and put him to death. Well, Carlos Hernandez not only did exist, he worked as an informant for the CCPD. And Carlos Hernandez went around telling people before they executed De Luna. He said, De Luna is in jail today, he said, because of the murder or stabbing I did. Hernandez, this is what the books and documentaries later showed. And then when you looked at the picture of Hernandez and De Luna, they do look almost the same. You could confuse them. And Hernandez, Carlos Inez eventually died. But the point was, the prosecutor, DA, they said there was no such person. They lied. They knew there was because he was an informant for them. So now you have a murder case, and obviously the Judge Mary realized that, yes, just like Judge Williams, realized they're trying to, this is a level of corruption, GPS tracking. This is a level of corruption that you do not see. This is criminal. False testimony is criminal. The Fort Worth cop that did the 21 years in prison, he was just released recently because of the collusion of a DA and a prosecutor in that region. Not only is that not doing your job, that's criminal. That's equal to what I explained to you earlier. If the scripture does say, making money through false means, through bad ways, it's like a deception that people engage in. But the average public, when they see a Judge Williams last week, because this came out in the Corpus paper, basically telling Mark Skirka, who's the DA, that we cannot stop you from what you're doing, withholding evidence, lying, suborning perjury. We just can't stop you, sir. And his only advice is you'll have to try to get civil charges, file them personally against Mark Skirka, because he's immune to criminality. And you would think after so many cases, just that this man presided, I wouldn't trust living in the city just because whatever connections Mr. Skirka has, which everything else that's going on within this region, I would assume you would be targeted. If Mr. Rosas brought charges because they shot a flash bomb into his house, and he thought gangs were attacking him, and then they tried to charge him with 7 counts of capital murder. I think if he even dared bring civil charges, that man would be targeted. That man would be targeted. How does any of this have to do, John, with the robbery of the bank right where you happen to live? It has to do with it because when the system's falling apart like that, when you just me hearing on the radio that Corpus Christi officials knew that they were supposed to do like the testing of the backflow, and this just came out, but they weren't doing any of this. These are criminal. The Flint, Michigan story, which is more famous for the water, many people were poisoned there. Went to the Aaron Brockovich situation, who Aaron Brockovich has been here making comments about our situation. They just charged yesterday, because I watched the news, they just charged like 4 more high officials in Flint, Michigan with criminal charges simply because they knew certain things about unsafe water. Now, what about if you were a DA or a cop that not just knew about, but were breaking the law by withholding evidence and doing all these things and causing possibly the direct execution of innocent people because of the case I just mentioned? You would think that after a while they would not do that. Look, lying, Scripture says, their mouths are open sepulchres. They are unable to stop. Scripture associates gluttony with drunkenness. Okay? Meaning if you're unable to control your appetite, you're addicted. It's just like someone that would be an alcoholic or a meth addict, many of my friends. It means you can't stop lying. So that means Scripture says it's an iniquity. It's an iniquity. And so maybe you have a man in office that was exposed like the DA here. He just can't stop. But his inability to stop lying about it, withholding evidence, doing it, cases handed over to making it to news, that was a Skirka case, and doing it again and again and again and again. It's an addiction. but it's an addiction that he engages in that causes, it takes the law enforcement and says, now we're going to take all the power of warrants, arrests, prosecution. And then in Corpus Christi cases where I've mentioned that, I don't want to keep mentioning my friend because he told me he got targeted again, where an officer targeted him, not in arrest, but targeted him and assaulted him, beat him up, an officer. And then it was reported to the local police. And they basically said, well, we'll make sure you don't do it again. But then he does these things again. All of this, in a regular community, officers face charges for things like that. Those things are not treated as in-house. Like even my friend Alan, Apostle Alan, got arrested because he, quote, smelled like shit. The officer put that on his arrest. And when Alan, that day, because they had him in jail, to them it's a game. It's like, it's not, there's no law in these particular cases. The judge, when Alan's case sat in jail for how many weeks, I don't know, they said, why are you in jail? The cop had on the report, he smelled like shit. That's what Alan told me. The judge says, how dare you? He said, oh, John, so they corrected it. No, they laughed. They laughed. You had the top leading law enforcement guy in the county just get called out again in public, and the judge, not only does the judge have to tell Mr. Rosas, you could go have civil charges, because I don't know what else I can tell you, Mr. Rosas. It's obvious that they're criminals. And then the DA walks out and says, we'll do it again if we can. Now, when that man enters public life, as soon as Mark Gonzalez takes it, who knows what criminal activity he'll be involved in? Meaning collusion with... How do you even stop that? How do you even tell people to come to this city, regardless of the thing I just told you about the water ball, the backflow, the city knew about it. Regardless of that, it's like you're entering, Mexico's not far from here. In the United States, policing and prosecuting, some of this corruption that they're showing you right in our media now. These normally are cases like they make documentaries and they've made them about us. This is not slight. If there's some federal authority that comes in and says, no, we need to criminally investigate this prosecutor here, there would be crimes that he should be in prison for. If you use false testimony, you withhold evidence, you lie, and you get witnesses to lie, like in the Gaitan case, and that kid is still sitting in jail. And Skirka knew that they lied in that case. It's another one that just got exposed. But that kid, if they can get the conviction, the jury in Rosas basically just was a good jury. But most jurists believe that the cops and the prosecutor, that they're not lying constantly. They have the opinion that they're at least going to be presented. But the judge himself, in this recent case, said, no, these prosecutors aren't there. They're criminal, he's basically saying, but you can only file civil charges. You shouldn't have the citizens in Oasis County having to resort to, well, maybe I can file civil charges because they want to charge me with 7 counts of capital murder, but they know they're lying because Williams showed us that, the judge. So it's an out of control. It's out of control. You say, but John, say if I want to relocate to Corpus Christi and I just, I'm not going to be like you with all your friends on the street. Makes no difference. You saw how walking in public, they come up to you, say, what are you doing in public? Well, I pay taxes. I thought I could walk in public. Okay, this is number 3. The only resolve on this, it's not that I'm just bringing up the older kid. It just happened again last week. That's the problem. That's the problem. It just happened again. And you say, well, justice. You can't keep repeating that. When my friends, if they get clean from drugs for a time, then they go back to it. It's called relapse. Or alcohol, if you go back, it's called relapse. The sin of lying and bringing it and having it within your, at your job as prosecutor, as DA, or even a police officer. When you're called out on that, like this Mark Skirka has been, time and time again, you think one of your last cases you would not have 22 pieces of evidence that you illegally withheld against a man that you knew did not know that they were officers. You knew it. You knew it. And I could tell just by looking at the case. No man is going to come out of his Rojas case. No man's going to come out with a gun in one hand, a clip, magazine, and bullets in the other, shooting. And no man's going to think when a flash bomb goes off in his house, who was already targeted by gangs in the past, no man's going to think, oh, the cops are here. The first response you're going to have is, damn, I'm targeted by gangs again. So you go to that man who had absolutely no criminal record, zero. And after he responded in a way that most people would, thinking it's self-defense, you charge that man with 7 counts of attempted capital murder. So any citizen in the city, if you have a warrant maybe for some gang kid, but you might have the wrong address, we might have a bomb go off in our house and it might be by PD. And if you have a gun for self-defense, the DA and prosecutor here, they're going to charge you on counts of capital murder. And if you killed somebody by accident because you thought your house was being robbed, they'll put you to death. They will put the capital murder as a death penalty offense. You must be honest. You must be truthful. I understand you're unable to repent at this stage of the game. I don't trust that man being in the city because he'll retaliate. He'll retaliate. If that Rosas tries to bring civil charges, that Rosas is going to get, people will go after him. That's how they're doing it here in this part of the country. Okay? I want you to know that.